The lucky country was a lie. The auctioneer's voice cracks on the final bid. A young dad squeezes his partner's hand, mouths, "We can't afford Australia." The hammer falls, sold for $1,000 more than they have. By Monday, the rental's gone too. Empty inspection lines, $10 lettuce, $6 petrol blinking at the servo. The GP clinic's sign reads, "Closed to new patients." At the airport, departure boards glow like exits. They were told this was the lucky country. But the middle feels like it's slipping, wages up, wallets thinner, record building, no vacancies, record migration, skill shortages anyway. Tonight, we follow money, policy, and people to learn why the middle is vanishing. The dream phrase, from lucky country to leaky country. To understand how we got here, we need to go back. After World War II, Australia wrote an unwritten contract. Work hard, own a home, raise kids near good schools, count on decent public services, retire with dignity. A 3-bedroom on a quarter-acre block wasn't a fantasy. It was the plan. Your wage broadly tracked productivity, your mortgage tracked your wage, and your suburb had a GP, a bus route, and a footy oval that didn't flood every spring. Meanwhile, something else was happening. A culture formed around steady security, house keys as adulthood, weekend barbecues as glue. Superannuation would come later, but the foundation was simple. 1 income could service the loan, 2 incomes felt safe. If you kept your nose clean, you moved forward. Then the 1990s and 2000s rewired the scoreboard. The mining boom roared. China's hunger for iron ore and coal pumped rivers of money through company profits, state budgets, and household confidence. Headline numbers sparkled, but underneath, a quiet pivot took hold. Asset prices, especially housing, started running ahead of wages. The family home stopped being just shelter and became a strategy. Banks loosened. Tax settings nudged people to treat property like a supercharged savings account. This was the moment everything changed. Negative gearing, reintroduced in 1987 after a brief mid-1980s pause, the 50% capital gains tax discount from 1999, and interest deductibility for investment property didn't just tilt the table, they made bricks and mortar the nation's favorite retirement plan. What nobody knew at the time was how quickly a culture of saving would morph into a culture of leverage. Household debt climbed. A mortgage wasn't just a roof, it was a lever to buy another roof. Equity became a magic word. Paper wealth rose faster than pay. While that was happening in the suburbs, services were straining, cities ballooned, hospitals filled, schools capped enrollments, commuters watched travel times bloat as housing pushed people farther out beyond the train lines and bus timetables designed for a smaller, slower Australia. Infrastructure lagged the growth it was supposed to support. The pressure cooker didn't build randomly, it built where policy pushed it. Inside kitchens, the bargain felt different. A young couple now needed 2 incomes to land that first mortgage, and even then the weekly budget had no slack. Meanwhile, the older cohort sat on soaring assets. On paper, everyone was richer. In the checkout lane, half the country felt poorer. Wage growth decoupled from productivity over the 2000s and 2010s. Profits had a good decade, pay packets didn't. The barbecue talk shifted, from adventures to interest rates, from holidays to offsets, from which suburb to how far can we push. Here's where it gets personal. A teacher who once could buy near her school began commuting across postcodes. A nurse grabbed permanent night shifts because the loading helped keep up with a loan that had reset higher. A tradie who'd always dreamed of a shed out back was now bidding against investors using tax-favored finance to buy the same fibro place he grew up in. The dream wasn't gone, but it was fraying. Meanwhile, what nobody planned for was concentration. Growth pooled in Sydney and Melbourne, pulling people, money, and services into magnets. Regional towns saw surges at the edges without the pipes, roads, or staffing to absorb them. Hospitals recruited overseas nurses while closing local maternity wings after hours. Parents queued for bulk billing clinics that weren't bulk billing anymore. The promise of universalism, good enough for everyone, slid toward tiered access, where the right postcodes softened the queues. Politically, the ground shifted too. Homeowners became a voting bloc with one wish: don't let prices fall. That meant every planning debate, every rezoning, every change to tax concessions crashed into a wall of fear. What happens to my nest egg? The system answered by protecting the asset ladder at the top rungs while telling the bottom rungs to climb harder. But there was one problem: when the ladder leans, climbing gets riskier. Let's talk leverage again. Low rates taught a generation the wrong lesson: debts don't bite. Then rates rose quickly. Households carrying big loans met higher repayments just as groceries, energy, and insurance jumped. The lucky ones used buffers, redraws, family help. The rest cut everything non-essential and hoped the next bill wouldn't bounce. Meanwhile, rents ran, vacancy vanished, and anyone without an asset faced moving repeatedly farther from work, with kids switching schools like suitcases. Now remember, none of this is a morality play. Families did what the rules rewarded. Governments banked stamp duty and bragged about growth. Banks lent into an asset that rarely falls. Councils pushed back on density and wore the blame for shortages. Employers enjoyed flexible labor without raising pay to match living costs. Everyone acted rationally. Together, the results feel irrational. This is the tension at the heart of the lucky country myth. If luck means you can buy in, you'll call it fair. If luck means you rent forever, you'll call it rigged. The gap between those experiences isn't just money, it's time, distance, stress, and the quiet math that decides whether to have a second child. As services buckle, the middle stops feeling carried and starts feeling carried away. 3 decades ago, the path was clear. Finish school, learn a trade, or get a degree, buy a modest place, move through life's chapters. Today, the path is crowded with detours that cost money, childcare that eats second incomes, private health to avoid the queue, tutoring because class sizes ballooned, car dependence because the train doesn't reach your suburb. Every workaround steals the slack that used to make middle-class life feel stable. And here's the pivot we'll follow from here. The pressure cooker isn't random, it's designed. Tax shapes behavior. Planning shapes geography. Incentives compound into outcomes that feel inevitable only in hindsight. To see why housing became the gravity well that pulls the rest of the story, we have to step inside the architecture that turned roofs into balance sheets and homes into battlegrounds. Housing, the gravity well. To understand the squeeze, step into a Saturday open home. The line wraps past the jacaranda. Half the crowd are renters clutching payslips. The other half are investors with spreadsheets. They're not looking at the kitchen, they're looking at the tax. Negative gearing sits quietly in the corner. It says borrow to buy, rent it out, and if the rent doesn't cover the loan, claim the loss against your wage. The capital gains discount is the wink that follows, hold for more than a year, and when you sell, only half the profit counts toward tax. Interest deductibility turns repayments into a business expense. Together, they don't just reward ownership, they reward owning more than one. Households became small property funds without needing to say it out loud. Here's the action on the ground. A young couple bids with a bank pre-approval sized to their wages. Across from them, an investor bids using equity from 2 earlier purchases. The investor can afford to run a loss each year because the tax system shares the pain now and the discount softens the gain later. The couple can't share their rent with the ATO. If they lose, they'll be back next Saturday. If they win, the repayments cut close. Stakes feel personal, the crowd knows it, tension makes silence loud. Meanwhile, demand gets turbocharged by people, not just policy. Record migration pours in students, skilled workers, families, but the new arrivals don't bring new bedrooms with them. In 2022-2023, net overseas migration surged to historic highs while vacancy rates fell to record lows in major cities. Short-term visas cycle faster than construction can respond. Airbnb and short-stay conversions skim stock away from long-term renters in the very suburbs where hospitality and universities hire. Investor appetite rises each time prices rise, because rising prices look like the safest bet in town. Supply on paper sounds simple, just build, but the choke points are baked into how we decide where and how to live. Zoning keeps density low near jobs and trains. Approvals stretch for months, sometimes years, as neighbors object and councils juggle traffic, shade, and parking. Infrastructure lags because pipes, roads, and schools cost real money and time. Builders face surging material costs and a wave of insolvencies that leaves cranes frozen mid-sky. Projects stall. The pipeline thins. What nobody sees from the auction lawn is the micro-friction in every step. A small infill apartment block needs a rezoning tweak. That triggers a traffic study, a heritage check, a height debate, a shadow diagram for a winter afternoon no one will remember. Each friction has a local logic. Together, they form a wall. The wall protects the existing street and punishes the missing homes that never get built. The shortage is invisible when you stand on a quiet road. It's crushing when you search one bedroom under $500. Then there's the human math. A nurse rents a unit 3 suburbs from the hospital. The landlord sells. She bids on a townhouse with a friend to split costs. They lose to an investor who plans to renovate and list on short stay. She moves farther out. Her commute doubles. The second job she used to take becomes impossible because she's on the road. 2 hours a day turns into 2 hours a day for years. That's birthdays missed, sleep traded, patience thin. Renters feel the squeeze first because prices reset faster than mortgages. Rent bidding wars aren't formal, but everyone knows the script. Offer above the listing, prepay a few months, add a glowing reference from your boss. Adult kids stay longer at home, couples delay kids. Friends who'd share a cheap place near the city scatter to the fringes. Regional spillovers pop as people leapfrog the city limits, pushing up rents in towns that never planned for sudden population jumps. Meanwhile, owners aren't immune. Rate hikes slam households who borrowed at the lows. Interest-only periods end. Fixed loans roll off cliffs. Insurance spikes in flood and fire-prone suburbs add thousands to annual costs. Strata levies climb as buildings age. The myth that owning equals stability now comes with a footnote. It's stable if you can hold on. Politically, each attempted fix hits a contradiction. Loosen zoning and locals worry about parking and sunlight. Tax investors more and existing landlords warn of rent hikes or sales that displace tenants. Cap short stays and tourism operators protest. Boost first home grants and prices lift to swallow them. Unlock greenfield land and infrastructure costs balloon while commutes stretch. But therefore logic traps policymakers, every lever has a shadow. Here's the impact that rarely gets said. Housing moved from being a cost of living to being the cost of everything. Employers can't hire because staff can't live near work. Schools lose young teachers. Hospitals lose nurses. Cafes rotate staff weekly because people keep moving. The asset economy siphons energy from the wage economy. When rent eats half your pay, you don't start a business. When your mortgage eats half your pay, you don't take risks. The country becomes cautious by design. And yet there are paths that work. Mid-rise near train stations. Build to rent with long leases and fair eviction rules. Faster approvals with clear codes. Tax settings that don't reward running annual losses to win a discounted gain. Infrastructure that arrives before the cul-de-sac fills. Cities that grow up, not just out. But the choices cut across powerful habits, and habits have voters. Back at the auction, the hammer falls. Another family resets their search radius. Another investor adds a line to a spreadsheet. The gravity well deepens, pulling wages, services, and life plans into its orbit. And even if you manage to stay in place, the next question hits: can your pay keep up with the price of standing still? Wages versus prices, the silent pay cut. Stand in a supermarket aisle on a Tuesday night and listen. People aren't comparing brands, they're comparing weeks. Wages say one thing on paper, the trolley says another. The silent pay cut arrives not as a headline but as a choice. Skip the butcher, switch the cereal, stretch the petrol to Friday. It's a grind disguised as normal. Here's the split. For years, productivity ticked along and profits did too, but pay packets lagged. Enterprise bargaining thinned outside big workplaces. Casual and contract roles grew where security used to sit. The scoreboard didn't stop moving, it just stopped moving in sync with wages. Then prices jumped: energy, groceries, insurance, and the gap went from annoying to brutal. This was the moment everything changed for household math. Electricity bills used to be a dull quarterly envelope. Now they're a shock twice a year. Gas rose. Groceries carried weather, fuel, and supply chain scars and passed them through. Insurance took the climate bill and mailed it to your letterbox. Childcare climbed faster than promotions. Every category that keeps a family functioning asked for more at once. Meanwhile, indexation didn't catch what it needed to. Bracket creep quietly nudged people into higher tax bands without making them richer. Fees rose, school levies, licensing, registrations, more friction on the same wheels. And then HECS indexation bit hard in high inflation years. A debt you barely noticed after graduation suddenly grew while you were sleeping, taking a slice of every pay cycle just as rent or repayments demanded more. While that was happening, households tried to outrun the treadmill. Overtime got popular again, paid or not. Second jobs crept in. Side hustles walked the line between hopeful and necessary. Families traded down, fewer dinners out, fewer sports for the kids, cheaper petrol days, dental checkups delayed, milestones shifted, weddings shrank, babies waited. The invisible tax was time spent calculating, comparing, postponing. Let's follow one family. Aaron teaches year 5. Marcus works nights in logistics. Their rent went up by $80 a week. The power bill added another $50 a month. Insurance jumped $200 a year. Aaron's HECS indexation added a few thousand in a single go, stretching the repayment line just as her union won a modest raise. On paper, they're up. In the account, they're down. They cancel swimming lessons, keep one car, and Aaron takes tutoring after school. Marcus picks up Saturdays. They still feel behind. Meanwhile, employers face their own squeeze. Small businesses see rent rise, inputs rise, premiums rise, passing it on risks losing customers, not passing it on risks bleeding out. Wage offers land in the gap between compassion and survival. The hospitality owner who wants to pay $28 an hour is also staring at tripled insurance and a landlord who knows what comparable tenants are paying. Energy tells a similar story with a twist. Households want to move to efficient appliances or rooftop solar to cut bills, but the upfront cost punishes the very people who need the savings most. Even with rebates, the payback period collides with tight budgets, especially after rapid energy price increases from 2022. Renters can't make the switch. Owners weigh a 5-year payback against a budget that doesn't have 5 spare months. A sensible long-term decision becomes a short-term impossibility. Here's where the psychology digs in. When every bill feels like a surprise, your world shrinks. Anticipatory anxiety sets in, people stop booking ahead, they stop planning the road trip, the course, the renovation, risk appetite drops. Ambition presses pause. The economy's engine hums on confidence, and confidence is built on spare capacity. Take away the slack and the society becomes careful, anxious, slower. Meanwhile, the public-private split widens inside wallets. Families who can pay jump queues, private health for quicker scans, private tutoring to beat class sizes, paid daycare hours to maintain jobs. Families who can't wait their turn, and the turn gets longer because more people opted out. The system feels worse for everyone at once. Out-of-pocket costs deter care, which becomes bigger care later, which costs more. Remember that ladder from earlier? The wage rung used to be sturdy. Now it flexes under variable hours, gig shifts, and broken weeks. Underemployment hides in the averages. People with jobs who want more hours can't get them. Others have hours they can't survive on without extra hustles. The spreadsheet says employment is high, the pantry says something else. And yet there's a lever that keeps stalling, productivity that actually shows up in pay. Training, tech, process improvements, when they land well, they should lift output and wages together. But the pathways jam, skills recognition drags, software arrives without redesigning work, and gains pool in profits or prices, not in payslips. People sense it. They feel like they're running someone else's upgrade. In the aftermath of the rate rises, mortgage-heavy households cut back hardest. Retail notices, services notice. The cafe loses early morning regulars. The swim school loses Tuesday. The mechanic hears, "Can we hold off a month?" Meanwhile, renters with no buffer become the shock absorbers of the economy. When anything hits, it hits them first and last. The silent pay cut isn't a headline, it's a habit and a stress loop. Budgeting becomes triage. It's the extra shift that's no longer optional. It's the holiday that becomes a long weekend at home. It's the second child becoming a maybe. It's the teacher who moonlights, the nurse who doubles, the tradie who says yes to jobs they'd usually knock back. If wages can't carry the load, people try to carry it themselves, and that load lands on backs, marriages, and futures. If the ladder up is wages and the rungs are cracking, people look for another ladder. The promise whispers, get more skills, climb faster. But what if the skills ladder is crowded, expensive, and missing half the steps? The skills trap: degrees, debt, and closed doors. If wages won't lift you, skills are supposed to. Study more, qualify higher, land better pay. That's the promise. Walk onto any campus and you can feel it, thousands of students buying a ticket to the middle. But the escalator stalls right after the exam hall. Universities expanded faster than the ladders they feed. More places, more degrees, more glossy brochures. Meanwhile, the job market narrowed. Entry roles that once trained beginners ask for 2 years experience. Internships multiply, unpaid or underpaid, priced for students who can work for free. Graduates drift into roles that don't use their qualifications, learning quickly that graduate can mean casual with a lanyard. HECS used to feel painless, pay nothing now, a slice later. Then inflation spiked and indexation bit hard. In 2023, HECS helped debts indexed at over 7%. Overnight, balances grew just for existing. You opened your MyGov and watched the number jump while your rent jumped too. Repayments accelerated as the threshold inched up slower than prices. The debt, meant to be gentle, became a headwind. It isn't just the total, it's the drag on choices. Moving out, changing jobs, starting a family. Meanwhile, the vocational path, the trades, the practical certificates, was treated like a consolation prize even as the country ran short of electricians, carers, mechanics, and builders. Apprenticeship wages can't touch big city rents. A first-year apprentice sees the same listings as a consultant. One can chase share houses, the other chases a couch. Completion rates suffer because the maths doesn't work. Employers need apprentices, apprentices need a place to sleep and a train that runs. There's a loop that traps people at the start. Licensing requires supervised hours. Employers want licensed workers. You need experience to get the license. You need a license to get the experience. Nursing grads chase graduate programs that don't fit the intake calendar. Teachers finish placements into schools with no mentor time left. Engineers send resumes into portals that filter for keywords before a human reads a sentence. The ladder isn't broken, it's missing rungs. Let's sit with Layla, a physiotherapy grad. She did everything right, volunteered at a clinic, top marks in anatomy, weekend shifts at a pharmacy. The hospital intake shrank this year. The private practice wants 2 years experience and client book potential. She takes a casual job as a support worker, good work, low pay while applying again. Her HECS ticked up by thousands with indexation. She can't move out of home without torching her savings. The degree didn't lie, the market hedged. Or Sam, a Sparky's apprentice. He's on the outskirts, 90 minutes from most jobs. TAFE classes are in the city, tools aren't cheap, neither is fuel. The landlord sells, the new lease is higher, the train line is closed on weekends for works. He thinks about quitting. Everyone tells him the money's great once he's qualified. The bridge between here and there is the problem. International talent sits in another maze. Skilled migrants arrive with degrees and experience. Recognition often drags forms, assessments, fees. An engineer drives Uber while waiting for a skills assessment. A nurse works as an assistant in nursing because the registration takes months. Employers complain about shortages. The system keeps the door half shut for the people already through it. Meanwhile, universities become funding machines for export education. Students arrive believing the brochure, study, work, pathway to skilled roles. They find shifts in hospitality and logistics, then face limits on hours, higher rents, and crowded classes. Some thrive, many tread water. The pipeline feeds the economy's demand for labor while promising something the labor market doesn't consistently deliver. What nobody tells high schoolers is that the pay premium for degrees depends on timing and field and varies with local demand cycles. Haymarket marketing grads saturate the city at the same moment aged care facilities can't staff Tuesday. The guidance counselor didn't lie, they just didn't have the map of bottlenecks. Parents repeat the mantra uni opens doors because it opened theirs in a different decade with cheaper rent and fewer graduates. Inside workplaces, the skills we say we want aren't the ones we reward. Soft skills, communication, teamwork, initiative matter, but selection filters for brand names and neat CV arcs. Lateral moves that build capability look messy. Career breaks look risky. Hiring managers pad job ads with wish lists that scare off capable applicants who don't tick every box. A shortage becomes a stalemate. Then there's the tech wave. Short courses promise to reskill you into data, cyber, AI operations. Some align with strong demand, others don't. Some deliver, others deliver certificates without networks. The successful alumni had a friend at a firm or a mentor who opened a door. Everyone else learned that skill plus access beats skill alone. The lesson is brutal and simple. Capability without a pathway is potential stranded. For families, the skills trap shows up as hedging. Students pick degrees with options, double down on minors, stack credentials. The cost rises while the signal blurs. Employers see more paper, not always more preparation. Meanwhile, the best preparation placements with hands-on supervision get squeezed by staff shortages. Mentors don't have time to mentor because they're covering shifts. Let's talk pressure valves. Some take the overseas route, UK, UAE, Singapore, where pay matches living costs or tax settings stretch salaries further. Others drop out of the formal ladder entirely, building small businesses online, trading time zones for autonomy. Many stay and cope, longer commutes, longer timelines, later milestones, hoping the door will open next intake, next budget, next cycle. Here's the sting. We told a generation that education is the answer. It still is, but education without matched demand, fair debt settings, and real on-ramps becomes a riddle. The country can't fix wages without productivity, can't lift productivity without skills, and can't convert skills without pathways. While the young squeeze up, the system quietly reroutes opportunity toward assets. The next chapter shows how that rerouting works. The asset economy when wealth works different. Here's the turn nobody likes to say out loud. The economy runs on two engines, wages and assets, and lately, assets have been doing the heavy lifting for the people who already have them. When homes become balance sheets, the rules shift. Work harder, yes, but own earlier, own more, and the wind blows behind you. Asset inflation outpaced income growth year after year, compounding quietly. A $50,000 rise in a house's value doesn't feel like income, but it behaves like power. It lets you refinance, buy the second place, or fund the renovation that lifts the suburbs' comps again. Meanwhile, your neighbor renting the back flat pays the updated market rate, which funds the interest on your new loan. Same street, different gravity. This is where inheritance slides in, not as mansions and yachts, but as deposits. Mom and dad refinance to gift 50 grand or draw on a line of credit. The bank of parents becomes the bank of first homes. Friends in the same friend group split, those with help buy at 30, those without keep saving while prices jog away. The divide hides in polite conversations about luck and timing. It isn't luck, it's structure. Superannuation, our national pride, plugs into the same dynamic. Balances ride markets, fees skim quietly, and the sequence of returns, good years early versus late, can change retirements. For middle earners, super compounds okay if wages keep up and fees stay lean, but fees bite harder on small balances. A market dip just before retirement reshuffles plans. Again, assets decide the room you have to maneuver. Property isn't just an investment choice, it's the political center of gravity. Decades of price appreciation, tax preferences, and high homeownership rates entrenched it. Homeowners vote in large numbers. Their message is simple: don't crash prices. That fear translates into planning caution, tax caution, and an allergic reaction to anything that might dent the line on a suburb price chart. Politicians read the room. Renter protections inch forward, while investor settings sit behind glass marked "do not break." Here's how wealth works different in the day-to-day. A family with equity taps it to cover rate rises, a medical bill, or the kids' braces. They smooth shocks with debt that's cheap relative to unsecured credit. A family without equity uses after-tax income, and when that fails, the credit card. Two households, same outlay, different costs and futures. The first pays 6% secured, the second pays 20% unsecured. Over a year, that gap widens into a canyon. Meanwhile, the asset economy influences behavior at scale. If you own two rentals, the tax system rewards your losses today for gains tomorrow. You're encouraged to keep stock scarce, maintain scarcity pricing, and hold through downturns. If you rent, every policy win you get, like a grant or a capped bond, risks being priced in by next auction season. In a market that expects capital gains, relief becomes fuel. Intergenerational friction grows quietly. Parents who worked one job, bought one house, and saw value triple tell their kids to just start small. Their advice came from a map that no longer exists. Their equity solves their kids' entry problem, but freezes out the kids whose parents rent. That's not moral failure, it's compounding math. The policy story wrote a sequel the culture hasn't read. The ripple effects show up in who takes risk outside property. When housing delivers double-digit gains, why start a business? Why fund a startup? Why invest in training that lifts productivity in 5 years? The safest bet looks like the house across the street. Capital pools in land, not ideas. The wage economy gets starved of the long bets that used to raise everyone's ceiling. Zoom out to suburbs. Owner-dominant electorates resist missing middle density that would add neighbors without towers. The political calculus says keep it quiet, keep it low. But keeping it low locks out teachers, nurses, ambos, and early career tradies who make neighborhoods function. Service deserts spread where house prices rise fastest. Then come the petitions about ambulance wait times. People adapt. Some roll portfolios into ETFs, hedging against overexposure to a single postcode. Others double down on property, chasing depreciation schedules and interest-only periods. Those who can't buy build micro-portfolios of cash and shares, aiming for liquidity the housing ladder denies them. It's smart, but it doesn't shift the gate that property guards. Security of tenure, school zones, control over your life. Here's the human beat. Anna and David bought in 2002. They paid off half, then leveraged to buy a second place in 2011. Their net worth rose on paper more than their combined 20 years of wages. Their daughter Sophia graduates with a decent job in marketing. They gift her a deposit. She buys a one-bed near a train. Her friend Eli, same job, same uni, no family help, saves and watches listings pass. One is in the room, one is outside the door. It's tempting to call this unfair. It's more specific, it's path-dependent. Policy set the path, money followed it, culture blessed it. And once enough households rely on asset inflation for retirement and security, reform becomes delicate work. Nudge too hard and you spook a voting bloc. Nudge too soft and the ladder keeps retracting for everyone else. Meanwhile, the state quietly leans on population churn to keep the engine humming. New workers, new students, new rents, new demand. But growth without room strains every seam. The next act steps into that arithmetic and asks how you grow a country when the welcome mat sits on a crowded front porch. Migration math, growth without room. Growth needs room, beds, buses, clinics, classrooms. Australia dialed population up before it built the space. Net migration surged, students, workers, partners, kids with backpacks and acceptance letters. The economy welcomed them, the housing market didn't. People arrived faster than bedrooms appeared and the pressure spilled into every queue. Start with the visa churn. Temporary visas ballooned, students taking hospitality shifts, graduates on post-study work rights, skilled workers filling rosters in hospitals and hotels. The churn kept GDP ticking and filled labor shortages on paper. But churn means movement, new leases, share house reshuffles, short notice moves. Each arrival lands where private rentals are already tight and vacancy signs don't exist. Supply follows slowly, demand flies in. Meanwhile, settlement patterns clustered around universities, hospitals, and central job markets. Inner rings took the first wave, outer suburbs took the overflow. Regional towns recruited nurses and teachers, then scrambled for rentals that weren't there. Hosts flipped long leases to short stays or raised rents to match desperation. Students doubled up. Workers couch-surfed between shifts. Managers learned to ask, can you find a place? Before, can you start Monday? Here's the contradiction, record migration alongside skill shortages. It sounds impossible until you see the bottlenecks. Recognition delays trap qualified migrants below their skill level. Employers want experience in Australia. Licensing systems ask for references and supervised hours nobody can get without the job the license unlocks. The hospital needs a nurse, the nurse needs registration, and weeks turn into months while wards run short and agency costs climb. Infrastructure lag met the surge. Trains widened peak-hour sardine tests. Buses missed connections on routes designed for yesterday's density. Emergency departments stretched until ambulances waited outside. Schools added demountables then ran out of yard. Childcare centers had waitlists that bent parents' work hours into pretzels. Everyone felt it, new arrivals, long-timers, the frontline staff trying to keep lines moving. Growth without pacing becomes friction, and friction burns. The politics turned sour at street level. Blame landed on people rather than settings. A new family on the block became the face of a rent rise decided by scarcity. A lecture hall full of international students became the face of a planning system that stopped mid-rise near trains for a decade. The reaction missed the arithmetic. If you invite people, house them. If you don't house them, you invite the squeeze. Let's walk with Rafael, an engineer from Sao Paulo. He arrives on a skilled visa, degree verified, portfolio in hand. The assessment body needs more documents. The recruiter needs local experience. He drives rideshare at night, studies construction codes by day, applies for internships that pay a stipend that won't cover a room within 90 minutes of the site. A mid-tier firm finally calls. The manager likes him, asks about start dates, then asks the question that matters most. Where are you living? The site is in the west. Rafael is on a friend's sofa in the east. He hesitates. The offer cools. Meanwhile, universities leaned on international enrollments to fund research and staff. Student arrivals spiked while purpose-built student accommodation lagged. Private rentals took the slack and snapped. The coffee line near campus stretched with workers and students chasing the same cheap rooms. For locals, it felt like competition. For the system, it was substitution, housing policy outsourced to the open market during a population surge. Workers on temporary visas faced another pinch, fewer protections and less leverage. If a landlord hikes the rent, moving means risking a commute you can't afford or a share house that doesn't fit shifts. If a boss cuts hours, complaining risks the next visa stage. The power imbalance feeds into the same metrics that headline GDP growth, a bigger economy that feels smaller in human space. Governments promised big numbers, housing targets, infrastructure lists, budget lines, but shovels take time and neighbors fight cranes. Projects stalled in consultation marathons. Cost blowout squeezed scope. A rail extension floated in glossy renders while buses drove past full. Announcements arrived faster than completions. In the gap, prices did what they do in scarcity, they climbed. Business wanted the people, health wanted the nurses. Care wanted the workers, construction wanted the trades, but workforce plans didn't pair with housing plans. A regional hospital signed 4 overseas nurses, the town had 2 rentals. The mayor called a motel. The nurses moved, then moved again. Retention isn't a slogan, it's a lease with a key. Underneath it all, there's a simple ledger. Population adds demand for homes, seats, beds, and bandwidth. If each category doesn't rise with headcount, the group with least power pays first and most. New arrivals without equity pay in rent and distance. Local renters pay in churn, owners pay in patience at the ER and on the freeway. The blame doesn't need a face, it needs a timetable and a blueprint. Treasury guidance flagged departures rising and net migration easing after the 2023-2024 surge. That's one way to find room, let the overflow flow back out. But building a society that breathes shouldn't rely on churn. It should rely on capacity that matches the invitation. Until that gap closes, resentment will keep reaching for easy targets, and easy targets aren't policy. While the migration math tightens every queue, the climate adds a new column to the bill. Floods, fires, storms, when risk rises, so do premiums. And when insurance becomes a luxury, the middle meets a cost of living it can't dodge. The two-speed economy, Boomtowns and Burnouts. While the migration math tightens every queue, the real economy runs on 2 tempos, fast in the pits, slow on Main Street. When commodities rise, money floods in. When they fall, it vanishes like a tide, leaving salt rings on the rocks and unpaid invoices in glove boxes. Start in a boomtown at sunrise. A convoy of utes and buses heads to a site guarded by cyclone fencing and optimism. Iron ore at triple digits pays for new utes, new kitchens, and state budgets that finally feel flush. FIFO crews rotate on and off like clockwork, 6 on, 1 off, jet lagged within the same time zone. Pay is strong, life costs are stronger. A carton of milk is dearer than a decent bottle of Cabernet back home. Rents spike to minor levels, and the school can't keep a maths teacher because the landlord wants corporate leases. Meanwhile, 3 states away, a Main Street watches the boom on TV. Petrol costs more, freight costs more, but the local wage offers don't budge. The two-speed economy isn't a metaphor. It's the spread between a mining camp mess hall and a bakery that closes Mondays because the owner can't find staff. When Beijing sneezes, royalties cough. School refurbishments, hospital wings, and roadworks pivot with commodity charts no family asked to ride. Here's the haunting pattern: windfalls are loud, hangovers are quiet. In the surge, governments collect royalties and payroll taxes, cut ribbons, and promise dividends. In the slump, they slow hiring, delay maintenance, and talk prudence. Households feel both cycles but never in sync. Rate hikes hit just after the big overtime dries up. Insurance renewals arrive right after a roster change cuts shifts. Timing becomes a tax. Sydney and Melbourne act like magnets, pulling talent and venture dollars. That gravity shapes everything. Regions pay more for basics because distribution is thin, but they pay higher wages only when a nearby project bids against the city. Workers follow the money, then discover the trap. Your pay is great, your costs match, and your savings don't move. On paper, you're ahead. In the account, you're treading water with heavy boots. FIFO life is a spreadsheet with birthdays missing. Families juggle week-on, week-off rhythms. One parent solo parenting, the other racking 12-hour shifts, sleeping in dongas, scrolling school photos over patchy Wi-Fi. The money is the reason. The burnout is the cost. Partners talk about 1 more year that becomes 3. Kids learn the sound of a roller bag at 4 a.m. The mortgage depends on rosters no family controls. Small businesses float in the wake. In boomtowns, rents climb as landlords index to mining wages. A cafe paying award rates loses staff to the site kitchen offering double. Insurance premiums rise because claims rose last season the cafe has never claimed. In the cities, landlords raise commercial rents to match residential fever. A bookshop runs the sums and moves online. A physio pivots to shorter appointments and higher prices, then feels guilty. Tourism lives by seasons and exchange rates. A wet summer drowns bookings. A dollar swing lures internationals or scares them off. Owners hedge by staffing lean. Workers chase hours across venues, adding commute time to make a roster whole. Agriculture carries its own dice roll, labor shortages during picking, heat that kills vines, floods that uproot plans. The packing shed raises pay and still can't fill the line because there's nowhere to live within 50 kilometers. Construction is the metronome of the middle and it's stuck. When approvals lag and costs climb, builders go under mid-frame. Subcontractors chase payments through administrators. Tradies juggle fuel spikes, tool theft, and insurance hikes that treat them like a risk class with no exit. When the pipeline pauses, everyone feels it. Suppliers, lunch bars, apprentices who lose a mentor just when they needed the next year of hours. The two-speed economy hides power in cost bases. A miner can pass costs through a contract when prices are high. A childcare center can't pass through parents who already hit their ceiling. An insurer recalculates risk zones and triples premiums. A surf school cancels a term and hopes for a calmer winter. Resilience becomes a budget line item only those with fat margins can buy. What nobody measures cleanly is the fray. Couples relocate for a project, then do it again, breaking social ties that usually buffer stress. Clubs lose volunteers to rosters that change monthly. The Ambo station can't fill Tuesday nights because half the town is on site and the other half is exhausted. Communities become temporary even when the houses don't move. Then the cycle turns, or softens. LNG shipments slow, overtime evaporates, regional rents ease but not by much because the mortgage investor in Perth still needs the number to work. State budgets tight, promised upgrades slip a year. The men's shed gets a grant, the hospital loses a position. The lag between commodity prices and public services is the worst kind of echo, arriving just when the private money leaves. Here's the fault line: an economy built on price swings needs buffers that households can't afford. Without them, the shock absorbers are people, nurses who pick up nights, teachers who take extra duties, small businesses that work 7 days to cover 5 days' sales. The burnout in one sector lands as longer wait times in another. The two speeds bleed into each other until both feel slow. Everything was about to feel heavier because the shocks stopped arriving one at a time. Fires, floods, a pandemic, and an insurance bill that didn't blink. When the weather joined the economy, the middle met a storm it couldn't outrun. Shock stack: fires, floods, pandemic, and insurance. The season stopped having seasons. One summer bled into smoke. The sky turned brown at breakfast. Kids learned the word PM25 before they learned long division. Black summer wasn't just flames on TV, it was weeks of ash on verandas, air purifiers sold out, and volunteer fireys sleeping in utes between shifts. Towns rebuilt before the fireground cooled, then watched the premiums arrive like a second fire. 3 months later, rain, not gentle, not seasonal, walls of water that redrew rivers and turned cul-de-sacs into creeks. The 2022 East Coast floods broke records across multiple catchments. Streets where kids rode bikes became boat ramps. Families lifted couches onto milk crates and hoped. When the water receded, the mudline stayed as a calendar. This high in March, higher again in November. You could read a year on a hallway. Meanwhile, coastal storms carved dunes like they were pastry. Insurance assessors walked tape measures into living rooms. Rebuilds battled supply shortages and tradie scarcity, then ran headlong into new flood maps. The home you'd owned for a decade was overnight high risk. Your premium tripled, your neighbors quadrupled. Across the ridge, the price barely moved. A quiet map had split a community into insurable and not. Here's where it gets cruel. Insurance isn't a luxury when your house sits in the path of weather, but it behaves like one when risk spikes. Households did the math: pay a premium you can't afford or roll the dice and hope next season blinks. Underinsurance crept in not as a choice but as a forced bet. Claims that once replaced became claims that partially patched. The gap between policy and rebuild widened into arguments on hold lines. Fire services talked fuel loads, flood planners talked buybacks. Some towns took the offer sell, leave the floodplain. Others faced a waitlist with no price. A buyback is a policy win on paper and a human rupture in practice. You sell the house your kids grew up in, move to a place with higher ground and fewer memories, and explain to your parents why the family Christmas table is now a different shade of pine. Then came the pandemic, a slow-motion shock that bent every rule at once. Borders closed, planes parked, and suddenly migration paused while demand for bigger homes rose. People worked from spare rooms, then decided they needed an extra room. Regional towns felt like refuge. City apartments felt small. Supply chains snapped, timber delayed, steel dear, appliances on backorder. Renovations stalled mid-kitchen. Builders priced jobs higher to survive volatility, then got blamed for the bill. The government pumped stimulus to keep the economy alive. It worked, but it also poured heat into a housing market already short on stock. Record low rates and fiscal support turned into bidding paddles. People who could did, people who couldn't watched. The snapback arrived with another twist: inflation. Groceries, fuel, materials, all up. The cure: rapid rate hikes, landed hardest on mortgage-heavy suburbs still paying last year's rebuild levies. Meanwhile, insurers recalculated. Reinsurance costs climbed globally after consecutive catastrophe years. Local losses stacked, fires, floods, storms again. Premiums rose to reflect risk and cost. In parts of Sydney and the north, you paid 3 times what your cousin paid an hour away. Some postcodes became quiet no-go zones for new policies. Others saw excesses so high that the policy felt like a bet you'd lose either way. Small businesses wore the same weather as homes. A cafe flooded twice in 12 months. The insurer paid once, then stepped back. The owner looked at a relocation they couldn't afford and a lease they couldn't break. On the coast, a surf school lost a season to storms that wouldn't stop. On farms, crops drowned or burned, premiums rose anyway. Risk migrated from balance sheets to kitchen tables. Health carried the echo. Smoke seasons spiked respiratory cases. Flood displacement stressed mental health services already thin. Pandemic fatigue bled into workforce shortages, nurses left, AMBOs burned out, GPs closed lists. When the next storm hit, the people who answer first were already tired. Wait times became stories, not numbers. This is the stack: climate shocks, pandemic whiplash, rebuild costs, rate hikes, and insurance that prices to the new normal. Households juggle repairs, repayments, and a premium they can't skip. Miss one and the others wobble. The middle-class safety net, savings, insurance, stable work, now has holes in all three. And when the wallet runs thin, the queue thickens. The pressure moves from bills to wards. Systems strain, healthcare, education, and the queue. When the wallet runs thin, the queue thickens. The first queue is at the GP, except the GP isn't taking new patients. Bulk billing signs come down. Receptionists learn to say, "We can put you on a wait list," knowing the list is a month long. Families split care. Dad goes to urgent care for the sprain. Mom delays the skin check another season. Preventative becomes optional. Optional becomes risky. Emergency departments feel like airports after a canceled flight. Everyone's stuck, nobody leaving. Ambulances ramp out front while nurses triage in whispers. Who can wait safely, who can't? A child with an asthma flare waits behind a fall, behind a chest pain, behind a mental health crisis that needs a bed that doesn't exist. Staff stretch one nurse across 4 patients, then 5. The corridor becomes a ward, the waiting room becomes a corridor. Meanwhile, GP deserts spread. In outer suburbs and regional towns, clinics close when the last doctor retires or shifts to private only to survive. Locals drive 40 minutes for scripts. The carless take 2 buses for a consultation that used to cost nothing and now costs a chunk of the grocery budget. Telehealth helps, then hits the wall of "you need to be seen," and the cycle repeats. Nursing shortages aren't statistics from a report, they're holes in rosters. Burnout after the pandemic didn't fade, it calcified. Nurses pick up doubles because they can't leave colleagues stranded. New grads land in teams that don't have mentors because the mentors are covering another ward. The hospital offers retention bonuses that feel like bandages. The real currency is time to care, and time is maxed. Then there's mental health, the quiet overflow. Floods, smoke, job cuts, money stress. People ask for help and find a 6-week wait for 10 subsidized sessions that end too soon. Psychs are full. Bulk billing psychology is a rumor. Kids sit on lists while schools try to triage with counselors who carry hundreds of students each. Families try to hold it together, then show up in ED at midnight because that's the only door still open. Education mirrors the same physics. More need, fewer hands, class sizes inch up. Relief teachers fill permanent gaps. A teacher goes on leave and the year group rotates substitutes for a term. Parents get emails about disruption to learning and add tutoring if they can afford it. If not, they accept that this year won't be the year their kid finally gets fractions. Teacher shortages feed on themselves. It starts with workload and ends with resignation letters. Marking at 10 p.m., yard duty at lunch, a new curriculum on Friday for Monday delivery. Graduates who wanted to stay 5 years last 2. The ones who stay carry coordination roles on top of classes. Principals become logisticians, allocating scarcity like ration cards. Morale lives on the notice board and coffee runs. Childcare sits at the hinge between the health of families and the health of the workforce. Fees climb, places don't. Parents plan pregnancies around waitlists. A center in the inner ring quotes a start date 6 months after mom's job wants her back. Grandparents become the shadow system unless they live interstate. For early educators, wages barely outrun rent. Centers cut hours when they can't staff ratios, and parents' workdays collapse. Universities, once buffers, pass strains forward. Tutorial groups swell. Staff on short contracts juggle marking loads with side gigs. Students from households under stress bring that stress into lectures, then into placements, which now double as recruitment because workplaces can't hire fast enough. Everyone runs hot, nobody has slack. Insurance and cost of living seep into these systems. Clinics pay higher premiums, so they lift fees or cut hours. Schools fundraise for basics that used to come from department budgets. A rural hospital's roof repair competes with replacing 2 anesthetic machines. Choices sharpen into trade-offs nobody wants to own. Meanwhile, the private-public split deepens. If you can pay, you skim the queue, private imaging next week, private consult the week after. If you can't, you wait. The wait feeds deterioration. A knee that could have been scoped becomes a knee that needs replacement. A mole that could have been removed becomes surgery with a bed search attached. The cost lands later larger. Here's a Tuesday on the ground. Aisha, a single mom, wakes at 5 to book an online GP slot for her son's rash. The clinic opens the calendar at 7:59. By 8:01 it's gone, she calls. The receptionist says try tomorrow. She goes to work late, stops at the pharmacy, follows their advice, hopes for the best. A week later, the rash is worse. The ED is full. She waits 5 hours, texting the neighbor to grab her daughter from school. The doctor is kind, the prescription is cheap. The day's wages are gone. Unknown to Aisha, across town, a principal is drafting a letter. The school will move to split classes because 3 teachers are out and no relief came. Parents will be asked for patience. Patience isn't the problem, capacity is. Systems can't run forever on goodwill. Goodwill frays when every lever pulls tighter: money, staff, space, time. The queue isn't just people, it's promises. Universal care means something only if the door opens. Right now, too many doors say later. When systems wobble, families look for exits, different suburbs, different states, sometimes different countries. The next question is simple and heavy. When staying feels like waiting, who decides to leave? The quiet exodus: who's leaving, where, and why? When staying starts to feel like waiting, people start checking flight prices. The departure board isn't a protest sign, it's a plan. The exodus is quiet because it looks like opportunity. A contract in London, a posting in Singapore, a hospital in Dublin that answers emails within a week. It's not dramatic, it's practical. Young professionals move first. Engineers chase Tier 2 visas in the UK, where pay matches rent better and a rail network shrinks distance. Nurses head to Ireland for relocation packages, free uniforms, and rosters that promise actual breaks. Teachers follow colleagues to the UAE, tax-free apartments included, weekends without marking marathons. The decision lands in spreadsheets: income after tax, rent, commute, childcare, flights home once a year. For some, the numbers say go. Let's walk with Jess, a mid-career nurse in Sydney. She loves her ward, she also loves sleeping. After 2 years of overtime and a rent climb that ate her pay rise, she signs with a London NHS trust. Relocation stipend, guaranteed mentorship, subsidized housing near the hospital. Friends say the NHS is strained too. She nods. The difference she's buying is margin: cheaper rent, shorter commute, and a system that promised a study day and delivered it. Meanwhile, software engineers and data analysts run an arbitrage. Remote-first firms in Europe or the US pay in hard currency. A team lead in Lisbon earns what a senior in Melbourne makes while paying half the rent. Some Australians reverse it, move to Portugal or Thailand, keep a Sydney salary and wire savings home. The middle class becomes mobile capital. Skills on a laptop, life in a cheaper city, super contributions still ticking. Teachers find a different deal in Singapore. High workload, yes, but support staff exist, class sizes cap lower, and apartments are part of the package. The lift is predictability. A Year 9 teacher named Mark takes a 2-year contract and discovers evenings again. His wife, a speechy, picks up private clients and wonders why waitlists are shorter. They miss family. They don't miss juggling 4 jobs in one. Then there are the ancestral doors. A grandparent's birthplace unlocks an EU passport. What felt like heritage becomes a financial instrument. Couples in their 30s weigh London winters against the chance to buy a flat at 3.5 times their combined income instead of 9. Some go intending to return, some don't. Return rates dip as timelines stretch and kids start school elsewhere. Healthcare professionals are courted openly. Irish recruiters tour Australian hotels, offering sign-on bonuses, paid flights, and accommodation. UK trusts promise clinical progression with rotations mapped in advance. Canadian hospitals offer relocation plus community support. Someone meets you at the airport, someone helps with the lease. The contrast isn't just pay. It's the feeling that you're being onboarded into a life, not just a roster. Not everyone leaves the country. There's an internal version, coast to region, city to interstate. Families swap Sydney for Adelaide or Hobart, trading salary for sanity, school fees for a backyard. A GP couple moves to a regional hub that actually needs them and finds a community that cooks casseroles when their second baby arrives. The mortgage is smaller. The list at the clinic is long. The trade-off is nights on call and fewer flights for grandparents. Then there's the contingent who don't want to go but can't stay put. International students who became graduates, who became workers, find the next visa step closed or delayed. They leave for Canada, where pathways are clearer. Employers lose continuity. Communities lose friends who were about to become locals. The churn that kept GDP humming becomes a one-way street out. Brain drain is the headline. The reality is messier: brain circulation. People go, learn systems that run differently, and some bring that back years later. Diaspora networks grow. Remittances flow in both directions: money home for a parent's surgery, money back for a sibling's deposit. The country loses in the short term: the nurse on your ward, the engineer on your site. It might gain later if return paths exist and housing doesn't slam the door. Motivations rhyme. Housing is the first verse. Pay that stretches is the second. Services that feel dependable is the chorus. Add adventure and the song writes itself. For parents, the question is schools and time. For singles, it's rent and roommates. For couples, it's whether the second child is a maybe or a plan. Micromoments tip the decision. A rejected rental application with 50 groups at the inspection. A 5-hour ED wait that ends with see your GP when your GP closed lists last year. A salary letter that looks good until the spreadsheet meets the petrol bill. A mate sends a photo of a 2-bed in Manchester for less than a Sydney 1-bed with mold. You don't need a campaign, you need a link to a recruiter. Not everyone who leaves is better off. Homesickness costs. Visas carry fine print, health systems everywhere are stretched, but the exit option alone changes behavior at home. Employers who can offer remote work keep people longer. Hospitals that map rotations save resignations. Schools that cut admin let teachers teach. Where that doesn't happen, the suitcase comes out. Back at the airport, a family of 4 heads for a gate to Auckland, closer, gentler shift. Across the hall, a 28-year-old engineer boards for Dubai. In the cafe, a nurse FaceTimes her mum, promising to be back for Christmas if the rosters allow. The exodus is quiet because it's millions of small, rational choices. Those who stay watch the group chats thin out and wonder which way their own math leans. Survival mode, how the middle class copes. When friends leave and systems stall, the people who stay get inventive. Survival mode isn't a slogan, it's a floor plan. A 3-bed turns into a multi-generational blueprint. Grandparents in the front room, kids in bunks, a curtain across the dining space to carve out a study for Zoom shifts. The mortgage stretches across 3 pay packets. Dinner stretches across 2 nights. House hacking has a rhythm. A couple in their 30s takes on a lodger and calls it community. A spare garage becomes a micro studio with a bar, fridge, and a kettle because the market won't provide a 1-bed under $1,000 a fortnight. Weekends mean runs to Costco, group chats for fuel share to kids' sport, and a roster of who gets the car. Privacy shrinks, resilience grows. Others redraw the map. Regional moves become the middle path, cheaper mortgages, longer drives. Families swap a 2-bed in Parramatta for a 4-bed in Wagga and a second freezer. The trade is services for space, commute for sanity. One parent negotiates remote days, the other picks up shifts where the hospital actually needs them. The kids get a yard. The grandparents learn FaceTime. Money pivots too. If property is out of reach, portfolios shift to liquidity. ETFs on autopilot, micro-investing apps that round up coffee money into index funds. It's not glamorous, it's disciplined. A nurse DCAS into a diversified fund every Thursday. A teacher tracks dividends as a buffer against surprise bills. Friends compare MERS like they used to compare suburb growth charts. The new dream is optionality, cash that moves, not bricks that don't. Side hustles step in where promotions stall. A logistics worker flips weekend furniture finds. A teacher sells curriculum packs online. A physio runs a Saturday mobility class in the local hall, cash tin, square reader, no admin. Gig stacking isn't ambition, it's oxygen. The trick is burnout. People learn the hard way that 3 hustles are worse than 1 bad boss. Lifestyle compresses, holidays become house swaps. Birthdays mean potluck and hand-me-down Lego. Streaming passwords rotate, dental becomes next term. Friends go sober not for wellness trends but because nights out cost a tank of petrol. The treat is time, a picnic at a river 90 minutes away with cheap cherries from a roadside stall. Joy survives, it's just cheaper. Community workarounds fill the cracks. Buy nothing groups hum with prams, coffee machines, and school shoes that reappear each year. WhatsApp threads allocate babysitting for shift workers, 2 hours here, 3 there, dinner dropped on a doorstep. Co-ops bulk buy staples and split costs with spreadsheets. A retired neighbor runs a Tuesday homework club so parents can pick up 1 more shift without guilt. Childcare hacks look like choreography. Parents overlap shifts by minutes. A tradie drops the toddler at a friend's, sprints to site, and returns at lunch to swap. A nurse group creates a mini roster. 1 off-duty adult takes 4 kids to the park while 3 others do sleeps. Grandparents become logistics officers, running school pickups as if they were rail timetables. Housing rules get learned like tax. Tenants document everything, join renter unions, know the notice periods by heart. Landlords who play fair get Christmas hampers. Those who don't face tribunal forms printed at the library. Rent negotiation becomes a script. We've been model tenants, the market's up, but here's what we can afford. If you need to list, we'll help with open times. Soft power, small wins. Energy costs push DIY transitions. A community group runs a bulk heat pump deal. Installers book out for weeks, but households cut bills by a third and stop arguing about showers. Split systems go in as heater replacements. Draft stoppers, curtains, smart plugs, low-tech, high payoff. Rooftop solar co-ops form in townhouse blocks where owners, corporations finally agree that sunlight is a commons. Food shifts from aisles to networks. Veggie patches resurface. A street swaps tomatoes for lemons and basil for eggs. A butcher throws in bones for stock when you buy 2 kilos of mince on a Wednesday. Kids learn soup. Adults remember recipes their grandparents made when nothing went to waste. Work itself bends under the pressure. People trade prestige for predictability. A mid-level in the city becomes a senior in a region. A startup title becomes a public service desk with flex time. The win is a roster you can plan around. Managers who allow 4-day weeks keep staff. The ones who won't become stepping stones to those who do. There are bright spots that feel like secrets. A build-to-rent complex with year-long leases and fair break clauses earns loyalty that a landlord can't buy with a rug shampoo. A council pilots pre-approved terrace designs near a train line. Buyers line up because waiting 3 years for an approval nearly broke them. A hospital pairs mentorship with childcare credits for night shift nurses. Resignations dip. And yet coping isn't fixing. Every workaround is time spent doing the government's homework after hours. Every second job is a vote of no confidence in the first one's wage. Every multi-generational house is a quiet admission that the housing ladder lifted a rung. People are resilient, but resilience is a currency you spend, not a policy you design. Families tell themselves 1 more year then we'll breathe. Some do, many don't. The hacks keep life afloat, not light. That's the difference between survival and security. Survival is clever, security is boring. Australia used to be better at boring. If coping is all we teach, we'll raise a generation fluent in hacks and starved of slack. The next act asks why we built the maze this way and which exits are real. Policy crossroads, choices that built the squeeze. Coping isn't fixing and hacks don't scale. This is where choices matter, the quiet levers that shape the squeeze and can, if we're honest, release it. Not overnight, not clean, but choices built this maze. Choices can redraw it. Start with housing, where the tax code turned shelter into a strategy. Negative gearing and the capital gains discount didn't fall from the sky, they were deliberate. They channeled savings into property and trained voters to see price rises as public good. Reform here is a knot of trade-offs. Cap loss claims to rental income only, and you cool investor demand without punishing genuine landlords who run break-even. Phase down the CGT discount, but pair it with time-based incentives for selling to first-home buyers or for adding new long-term rentals. Grandfather existing holdings to avoid a cliff and build trust that change won't torch retirement plans. Supply is the second half of the sentence. Zoning reform isn't a slogan, it's a map. Pre-zone mid-rise within walking distance of trains and jobs. Replace case-by-case battles with code-assess approvals. Meet the rules, get the tick in 30 days. Fund infrastructure up front with a federal-state pipeline that releases tranches only when dwellings actually start, not when they're promised. Back councils that say yes with revenue sharing. Compensate locals for change with upgrades they can see, parks, schools, safer streets, so density feels like amenity, not loss. Short stays need lanes. Limit entire home short-let days in tight markets, exempt hosted rooms. Several states and councils have already introduced caps and levies, scale what works and standardize data. Create a licensing system with real data, then charge levies that fund affordable housing in the same postcodes. Encourage build-to-rent with tax parity to commercial property, long leases, and predictable indexation rules. The exchange is clear. In return, require caps on annual rent rises, reasonable break fees, and maintenance standards that treat tenants like customers, not costs. On income, the wage productivity divorce won't heal by speech. Rebuild bargaining where it matters, sectoral or multi-employer deals in fragmented industries like care and hospitality, so decent operators aren't undercut by cowboys. Tie productivity incentives to worker outcomes. Accelerated depreciation or tax credits for tech and process upgrades only if firms commit to training and share gains with staff. Make skills recognition fast and portable, national micro-credentials that count across employers, plus paid transition time for workers to actually use them. Fix the silent taxes. Bracket creep should be structural, not opportunistic. Legislate automatic indexation of thresholds to wages, not CPI, so wage growth doesn't feel like a penalty. Reset HECS indexation to the lower of wage growth or CPI, backdate the most punishing year, and raise the repayment threshold so early career pay isn't mauled just as rent bites. It's not debt forgiveness, it's debt fairness aligned with earning capacity. Services are the spine. Healthcare funding needs less heroics and more predictability. Increase Medicare rebates for longer, complex GP consults targeted to deserts and tied to bulk billing rates. Fund multidisciplinary clinics where GPs, nurses, and allied health share care so EDs stop becoming default. Pay nurses and teachers retention bonuses that trigger after mentoring juniors, not just for staying, time to teach, time to care, and a reason to pass the torch. Expand childcare subsidies where they actually unlock hours worked. Tie support to availability as well as income, and co-fund new centers near transport hubs with workforce housing above them. Climate resilience can't sit in a footnote. Create a national risk pool to smooth reinsurance spikes for high-risk areas with pricing that signals risk but doesn't exile households. Pair it with buyback and drays programs, acquire the worst, elevate the rest with grants and tradie pipelines that don't leave towns stranded. Update building codes to the weather we have, not the one we remember, and don't strand low-income owners with mandates they can't afford. Offer zero-interest loans repayable on sale, so safety happens now and cost lands when equity exists. Political economy is the hardest room. Homeowners vote. So make reform a homeowners project too. Offer transition protections. If you bought under one set of rules, you won't be punished overnight. Float citizen dividends from rezoning gains when a suburb upzones. Share uplift through local infrastructure and rate offsets. Slice speculative heat by taxing vacant land and empty dwellings meaningfully, then reinvest locally so communities see the benefit of fuller streets. Migration calibration is arithmetic, not vibes. Set a housing-adjusted cap that links net arrivals to actual completions and vacancy rates with a public dashboard. Prioritize visas that relieve bottlenecks, nurses, teachers, tradies, and bundle placements with housing partnerships so recruitment isn't an empty promise. Clear skills recognition fast for people already here. It's cheaper than recruiting a second person to wait in the same queue. Finally, accountability. Publish delivery ledgers suburb by suburb, homes approved, homes started, beds open, teachers hired, trains added. Tie political careers to those ledgers. Build boring competence into the brand again. Australia's middle doesn't need fireworks, it needs follow-through. If we choose people-first settings and stick to them, the hacks can fade and the habit of security can return. Choices built the squeeze. Different choices can loosen it. Future's 3 paths Australia can take. At a policy table late at night, 3 maps sit side by side. Each is plausible, each has winners and losers. The question is which one keeps ordinary lives breathable. Path 1 is asset first. Keep the housing market the national savings plan, protect prices, minimize shocks, move slowly. Councils nod to character, approvals stay bespoke, tax settings stay familiar. Migration taps are adjusted but rarely tied to housing completions. Services get incremental boosts, not rebuilds. The promise is stability for owners, predictability for investors, and soft landings at retirement. The price is stratification. Renters age into insecurity, entry becomes inheritance dependent. Teachers, nurses, and tradies commute further or leave. Build costs drift up, small builders fold quietly. Skills recognition improves a bit, but bottlenecks remain. Families keep house hacking, side hustling, delaying kids. The middle still copes, it doesn't breathe. This path banks on patience outlasting pressure. Path 2 is people first. Treat housing as infrastructure. Pre-zone mid-rise near trains, legislate fast approvals, fund pipes and parks before cranes. Retarget tax to income over assets, dial down the CGT discount, limit negative gearing to rental income, and recycle revenue into social and affordable builds that stay affordable. Tie net migration to homes completed with a public meter everyone can see. Services become the spine again. Push Medicare rebates for long GP consults in deserts, tie them to bulk billing rates that open doors. Pay nurses and teachers to mentor, not just to stay. Build childcare above stations with workforce housing layered in. Reset HECS indexation to wage growth and raise thresholds. Underwrite a national insurance pool so premiums signal risk without exiling postcodes. Fund buybacks where needed, elevate and retrofit where possible. The cost is discomfort and noise, prices cool, some regions dip. Equity-heavy households worry, construction strains then scales, councils face backlash and need political cover. But the payoff is time restored to ordinary lives, commutes that shrink, queues that thin, rent that's predictable, careers that ladder. A teacher can rent near their school. A nurse can afford to stay. A tradie can complete an apprenticeship without couch surfing. Path 3 is hybrid. Move steadily, protect trust, prioritize pressure points. Keep a moderated CGT discount with time-based incentives, longer holds for build-to-rent, exits rewarded when selling to first-home buyers. Cap negative gearing losses to rental income, grandfathered for a decade to calm retirees. Upzone in rings with citizen dividends. When density rises, locals see new parks, school upgrades, and lower rates funded by uplift. Migration calibrates to capacity quarter by quarter. Health and education visas are prioritized, bundled with housing partnerships and fast-track recognition. Student numbers align with purpose-built beds and placements. Infrastructure pipelines lock into milestone-based funding with penalties for phantom approvals. Childcare expansion targets deserts first, tied to workforce bursaries for early educators who stay 3 years. Insurance shifts under a national risk layer, with regional adaptation grants for raising, retrofitting, or relocating the highest risk. Building codes step up with zero-interest compliance loans repaid on sale. Energy bills fall via bulk heat pump programs and community solar rolled by councils suburb by suburb, layered with targeted rebates for low-income households. The politics stays careful, but the direction is clear. You trade less blast radius for more time. You accept slower change to keep coalitions together. Whichever path we pick, it's really a choice about who gets to live close to the work that keeps cities alive. Picture a map of Sydney with 3 pins, a teacher in Parramatta, a nurse in Randwick, a tradie in Blacktown. On asset first, 2 pins drift outward. On people first, they move closer. On hybrid, they hold, then inch inward over a decade. Let's test it with a family. Mia teaches science, Jay is a paramedic. They've rented near the hospital for 8 years. Under asset first, their rent keeps climbing. They consider Perth or London. Under people first, a build-to-rent complex opens with long leases and fair indexation. They get a unit. Under hybrid, their suburb upzones. 2 years later, a midrise opens and they slide in without leaving their network. Now a nurse on night shift, a tradie apprentice, a single parent with 2 kids. People first opens doors fastest. Hybrid protects stability while building capacity. Asset first keeps the lights steady for those already inside. The middle class is a roster, not a slogan. You need them to stay if you want a city to work. The decision isn't abstract. It's the Saturday auction with a different ending. It's a rental inspection with 20 groups, not 80. It's an ED wait of 2 hours, not 6. It's a child starting school near their grandparents. Policy is just a way to change Tuesday. Everything was about to come back to one family at one auction. With one bid and one sentence none of them wanted to say out loud. At the curb after another Saturday auction, the family doesn't fail, they opt out. The agent smiles, they turn away and choose a different life. Luck only holds when it's shared. If you want the deep dive on the reforms that worked abroad and what it'd take to fit them here, subscribe and watch the next episode. We're mapping the exits and the turns that matter. New episodes weekly, stay with us.